Greetings, and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope that you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us on the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you can find us at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. So, I should probably explain, I'm playing with words this summer a little bit, and if you have complaints, you can blame Brenda for this, because she said, well, she was reading a couple articles about our history as Methodists, and she's like, we don't hear about any of this. I'm like, that might be a good series to do at some point. Let's do kind of a short series on our history as Methodists, and especially because there's so much of our history that is reflected in the world we live in today, and so it would be good. And so the mystery part of this is that sometimes our history is a bit of a mystery, and it's our Methodist history, so I just smashed the words together because I'm kind of a nerd. And so that's where we are. The last part of the Brand Plucked from the burning, we'll see that come later in the message, and describes kind of something an event that happened to our founder, John Wesley. But to get at it, to understand where we came from as Methodists, we got to kind of understand what was going on in the world that John Wesley was born into. Because he was born into and lived in a world that was full of kings and churches and dissenters and societies and politics and lots of politics. This was the world that he was brought into, with all of its conflicts and complications, and it was it was hard to navigate through all the stuff that he faced as they were going through. Some of the folks that were involved in this, we had a couple of kings. These aren't all of them, but James I and Charles I were kind of in the middle of this. You had this group of dissenters. Now the dissenters were important because this was the Church of England. They had split off from the Catholic Church. They had formed their own church, and the head of that church was the King or the Queen of England. But they had put in place a way that people who disagreed with them could disagree. And the hard part, though, was that they had to register with the government as a dissenter. They could attend dissenting churches, but those churches had to register with the government, because if they didn't, they could come and shut you down. Because the Church of England was the only acknowledged church unless you were on that list, unless you had specifically signed up and said that you were dissenting. But that was not a good place to be, because the dissenters, they couldn't hold local office, they couldn't vote in local elections. This was, a 1700s version of a terrorist watch list almost, because these were the folks they were going to watch, that they were going to pay attention to. These were the folks that many times were also harassed by the government. But it wasn't all because the government was just mean, because England had gone through a civil war that was started by a group of Puritans. We think from our elementary and middle school history, the Puritans as being very good, nice, wonderful individuals, but they were causing problems in England. And for a period of time, there was no king or queen in England. It was being run by the Puritans after they kind of took things over. There was lots of stuff that was going on. This was the world that John Wesley was in the middle of. Now, the Puritans, why we know them a little bit so well is because they would eventually go on. They would be the folks that would come to, at the time they called it the New World, and ended up being Massachusetts. That they would come and settle and start things, and they still affect the society that we live in today. But that's where all of this was kind of coming from. All of this was around John Wesley in his life and during his lifetime. Now, John's parents were Samuel and Susanna Wesley. They were both the children of dissenters, but they weren't themselves. They stepped away from what their parents had been doing. And in fact, Samuel Wesley, his family name was Wesley, had a T in there. But when he became a member of the Church of England, he wanted to get far away from that, so it became Wesley. Samuel and Susanna Wesley. And they would eventually go on to have 19 kids. Only 9 of them would survive into adulthood, but that still is 10 kids that they had. This was, a very large family. And John Wesley was a part of this. And this was the world that he was a part of. It was one that was founded in constant conflict, because there was always the conflict between Catholics and Protestants, between the Church of England and the dissenters, between the Tories and the nonconformists, and you could keep going on and on. There were conflicts that were surrounding John Wesley on all sides and everything that was going on. What does this mean for us, though? What does this mean for us as a people? How does that help us? Well, we live in a world that feels like we are surrounded by conflict a lot of times. There are the constant conflicts between different religious groups, whether it's Christians and Muslims, or Muslims and other folks, or Christians and other folks, or other religions against other religions. We have that going on. It's been in my lifetime. I still remember the conflict between the Protestants and Catholics in Ireland. I mean, this is not an unusual thing. We have folks that we are surrounded by conflict. We also are surrounding ourselves with perceived conflicts. That seems to be the thing today, is that we have lots of things, and so we see all of these things that are coming out saying, we've got to protect our religious freedoms against these perceived threats that maybe really aren't threats across a huge variety of issues, and so we're weighing those things out. We find ourselves in the middle of this conflict. But what is it that we can do? Well, this is where we can take a lesson from John Wesley and the lessons that he learned as he was growing up, having grown up in a world that was full of lots of conflict. Wesley would learn great lessons at home. That those lessons would help him to shape the revival that was going to take place in England, that would spread into first the colonies and then into the United States. Wesley lived for 91 years. And in that time, they went from being no such thing as Methodist to, at the time of his death, there were some 60,000 plus people in England that identified as being Methodists. That was in a country of 8 million people. Put that in perspective, that there's about 6 to 8 million people in the state of Missouri. And so, that was a lot of people that were attracted to his message that he was preaching, to the doctrines that he was preaching and teaching, and to all of the places that he was spreading across England. He probably rode somewhere around 250,000 plus miles on a horse. I don't know that I would want to ride that many miles on a horse, and I feel sorry for the horse if I did. But that's what he did. He went all across England preaching this message. And there are some folks some historians that would even say John Wesley is one of the reasons why England didn't go into another civil war, because of his presence and his wisdom and his leadership in helping kind of work through different things, or at least just keep people calm in times of conflict. John Wesley was born in 1703, but it was in 1709 that we get one of the first big lessons that would come from him. And this is a story that has kind of made it into the legends of the Methodist Church. And it goes a little like this.
Quickly! Move away from the house! Quickly!
Come, children!
something special for you today. Something very special indeed.
Now, they have to say that they take a little bit of dramatic license with the story, not much, and in fact, it's not probably where you think. It's the nice way that they are presenting Samuel Wesley's congregation. They weren't on Samuel Wesley and his parish that he was appointed to were not on real good terms, and in fact, there is some speculation that it was one of his parishioners that set the fire to the house that John was almost lost in. But it's the last part. It's what his mother Susanna says, though, at the end of the video that is recounted. That she said, "You're like a brand plucked from the burning." This comes from Zechariah chapter 3, verse 2. "And the Lord said unto Satan, the Lord rebuked thee, O Satan. Even the Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem rebuked thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire?" Susanna would go on to say, she knew that there was something special about John, that he was chosen for something special. But Susanna would have said that probably about any of her children, because she was that kind of mother. She was very intelligent, very well educated for never having gone to school, and she instilled that love of learning in her children. She would go and she would spend time, at least an hour a week, with each one of her kids, one-on-one, which, if you've got one or two kids, not hard. If you've got, maybe 10 kids at home at any given time, that's more of a challenge. There was never any doubt in her children's mind that their mother loved them and would be an important part of their lives up until the time that she died, even. She would be one of John Wesley's closest advisors. This was where he began to learn those lessons of reaching out to the people around him, doing something special. And in fact, that phrase of "brand plucked from the burning" would go on to be kind of a catchphrase in early Methodism that would signify the special mission that they were on, that the work that they were doing and reaching out to people. We can take this even more. We look at our reading for this morning from 1 Thessalonians. And this is describing, 1 Thessalonians is describing something different. It is not about separating out who doesn't belong, but it is saying, go and be encouraging, go and find others, share with them this good news about Jesus Christ, do this kind of work. At the end, we get so continue encouraging each other and building each other up, just like you are doing already. This was what they were called to do, to go and to build others up, to reach out to them, to share the good news. That's what John Wesley was doing. It's why he ended up preaching in fields and preaching in all other places, because that's where the people were. And that's where he knew that after some convincing, that's where he knew that he had to go to find them and to reach out to them, to share that good news. He was not concerned about trying to keep the people out, but he was concerned about, am I reaching everyone that needs to be reached? Because there were so many in that time that were caught up in all the conflicts that were going on. And Wesley said, we can find them, we can reach them, we can share that good news, that gospel message. And that's where we can go. In the midst of all the conflicts that we face, in the midst of all the conflicts that are around us, real and perceived and everything in between, we can be the ones that can go and can reach out and can share that good news, or we can be the ones who go to encourage, and that we can be the ones that reach out for that next brand that we pluck from the fire to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Let us go in this week to share that kind of message in a conflicted world that needs that kind of hope and that kind of promise that can only come from Jesus Christ. Now, that's not to say that we are always very good at doing that. And in fact, in our Methodist history, we'll see over the next few weeks that we have at times been good at that, and at other times not been very good at that. But part of what we do and part of who we are as Christian people is we know that we aren't always going to be the best at that. And so we offer words of confession. And more importantly, that we receive the words of pardon, where we remember and are reminded that we have been pardoned by God already, that we have already been forgiven by the atoning work of Jesus Christ. And so first this morning as we come, I was forgetting something. As we come together this morning, I invite us to come to this table, to share the work that God is doing, to first make our confession, but then also to know the forgiveness that comes from Christ.